Hey everybody, Sandy here from Motivated to Heal. I'm here with my beautiful client Miranda. She's going to talk about what her journey has been working with me. So, hi Miranda,
Hey, Sandy.
how's it going? Thanks so much for coming on. It's always great when people are able to do the video calls. So, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing good. So, why don't you tell me all about our journey together, where you were when we got started and how the journey went and where you are?
Okay, so it started in 2009, I'm sorry, 2019. I think it was early February. I had been living a super healthy lifestyle, like juicing celery and exercising a lot. And I was gluten and dairy free, doing all this stuff, I thought I was supposed to do. And I started getting like a pelvic type infection, uh, yeast, that sort of thing. And so nothing I was doing was working. So it was like all of February, and I was doing all the usual stuff and thinking, okay, when is this thing going to go away? It's like I wasn't eating sugar, but I was eating a lot of fruit, um, doing, like all the home remedies. And finally, I ended up going to I've always been holistic minded, so I went to a holistic practitioner, and they were like, Candida diet, blah, blah, blah. Make sure you're not eating sugar, limit your carbs, that sort of thing. So I became more restrictive on that. And I took a bunch of supplements they told me to take, which I think it's kind of like a cookie cutter approach. They tell everybody, to take this stuff and like use tea tree oil and probiotics, all that usual stuff, eat more fermented stuff. And I was doing that, and it just would not go away. And sometimes I noticed it was getting worse and worse. So I changed doctors, and then that doctor put me on more like a keto type diet. And I got really sick on that diet. It became a million times worse. And then I started having like bladder pain, and then so I was like, okay, obviously I have to go off this keto diet because that's when things got really bad. And I quit doing that. And then I went to a regular doctor, and they did all the usual blood work and there was nothing wrong. And then I went to a specialist, and they were like, oh, nothing's wrong. They tested my hormones with blood work that time and that sort of thing. And I went and I saw an allergist. And then I probably saw two other, one of them was a naturopath down here where I live, like has a big clinic. And it was like $140 an hour. And they were always running late, but you always got charged for the full hour. And they stayed so booked up, you could only get an appointment like every 8 to 12 weeks. So it's like you would go to the appointment, and if you had an issue or, something wasn't working, you would have to wait until your next appointment to get any course correction or any sort of help. And I actually came across your stuff on one of the Candida forums during that time. And I remember watching your video on how, like eating a healthy diet instead of a restrictive diet. And also about you had mentioned on one of my posts about look into oxalates, ammonia, and Dutch hormones. And that was so specific at a time when it was like about 7 months at that time, and I hadn't gotten any specific answers. And it resonated with me because it was so specific and direct. And I didn't know anything about oxalates or ammonia. And I remember kind of like I was aggravating you a lot, asking a lot of questions. You were so patient with me. And I remember going to your website and like talking to some of your other patients that were really nice and all that had gotten better. And so I told my husband, I was like, oh, I have to, see what this lady can do, because I think she has like the test and the knowledge where I can actually get better because nothing else is working. And by that point, I was in so much pain. Like I was going to work every day with my pelvic area felt like it was on fire. Just miserable. And it was really starting to affect my mental health because that by that point it was, like 7 months. And that's you think, well, coming up on a year, it was like the infection from hell. And I remember starting with you, and he was like, it's such an investment because we've already spent all this money with all these other people. I mean, we spent easily in the thousands
Mhm.
in the course of these months, and nothing had worked. And so you were like literally my last ditch effort. And it worked. But I did the organic acids test, and we found I had a really bad oxalate issue. And I started back on dairy in the form of raw milk and raw cheese. I should have never cut out dairy from my diet. I did myself a huge disservice. I started eating a more balanced diet instead of all the superfoods, all the greens and the almond products and sweet potatoes and kai seeds, or however they're pronounced, like all this stuff that you think is really, really good for you. It wasn't good. I did it to myself. And you basically did the test and the protocols that I went on, and I was seeing results in like 4 weeks, 6 weeks. I was out of pain.
Yeah, no, it was amazing. And I remember for you too, it was tough making the switches on your diet. Talk about that
I had food fear. I was so
a little bit.
scared to eat anything with sugar.
Yeah, yeah. That was a fun journey though. And it just goes to show how much that reprogramming is needed from we get into such a food phobia with all these diets, thinking that diet's the answer. And all this time, then we start adding in foods and you end up getting better because we were working on those root causes. And it's crazy how often, and I work with a lot of women with the exact same issues. It's oxalates, ammonia, and oftentimes their hormones are playing a role. Sometimes they're not, but those two need to be focused on so big.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was so surprised. I could have also sworn, like hormones were going to be a huge one for me.
Mhm.
And we did the Dutch test, and it didn't really show anything, but it was still very worthwhile because it ruled
Mhm.
out the possibility of hormones.
Yeah, and exactly, and that's why we test so we know. And then and that's why oxalates and ammonia are always first on my list. And it, most people when they have these chronic infections, they're thinking, oh, I need to do gut work, I need to kill Candida, I need to do this, and we didn't do that. We didn't do any of that.
No, not at all. And
You
the
know.
funny thing is, I had one of the previous people I'd worked with, like gut work was a big thing. So they had me drinking a ton of bone broth. And I think I was reading something about, and correct me if I'm wrong, but for some people that converts to oxalates.
Yeah, definitely it could, but it's just the histamine response with the bone broth. A lot of women have SIBO, and when you start drinking bone broth, especially if it's hydrogen sulfide SIBO, you start eating the SIBO, you're building up your sulfur, you're building up your ammonia. So that can be contributing also, especially if it is the hydrogen sulfide SIBO. You know that sulfur really causes dumping of oxalates, and oxalate detox is meant to be very slow. It needs to be an incredibly slow process, not something we want to speed up. And when people are increasing any form of sulfur like that, you're going to cause a big dump.
Yeah, that's what happened to me. I kept getting myself in trouble, and the whole time I was thinking, because we've been conditioned to think, well, it's either fungal or bacterial. It has
Mhm.
to be one of the two things causing me this issue. Like, what else could it be? So that like opened up a whole different world as far as my viewpoint on what could be causing symptoms.
Yeah, definitely. And I personally suffered from the same issues too. And I know if I go back um, to eating too much sulfur on a regular basis for a long period of time, I start to develop issues right away vaginally. Like it's like a few weeks too much sulfur, the vagina is going to act up first. And it's amazing. People, oh, it's a yeast infection. Oh, it's a bacterial infection. It's like, no, you're really throwing off your pH. You're throwing it off. And when you start addressing that detox issue, it goes away without ever killing anything.
Yeah, that was amazing. Just the quick turnaround.
Yeah, definitely once you get it out. But thank you for coming on and sharing your story. I very much appreciate it. If anybody's interested in coaching, you can check out my website, www.motivated2heal.com. It's the number two. And you can also check out my book, Heal Yourself. So thanks a lot, Miranda.
Thank you, Sandy.
Okay, bye.